Some people have some things to say about the Dolphins. We're going to react to it and see if what they're saying is true or not. What is up, Finn fans? Happy Tuesday morning to y'all. Whoever's up at 7, and if you're watching this at 7. If not, hi, how are you? How are you doing today? There's been a few talkings about the Miami Dolphins. NFL Live had a few things to say. Asante Samuel Sr. had something to say. And then I'm even going to go back to kind of what Raheem Mostert and Jonnu Smith had to say on their partings, which is weird. And we're going to talk about everything and all the little things that are said. And if it's true and if I agree, I'm going to be like, oh, I got nothing to push back there. But if there's some things that I'm like, blah, 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 we're going to push back. And, obviously, if you have been following me for what I've been doing this 7 years now, if you've been following me for 7 years, you know that I am not a rah-rah cheerleader of the organization and the team, right? They do something wrong I don't like. I'm going to tell you straight like it is. Like when they brought back McDaniel and Greer, go back and watch the video. I was not happy about that. I've talked about moves. When they fired Flores, I thought they should have fired Greer. When we were looking at a new head coach, I didn't like that they were force-feeding Tua and Boyer in that situation. There's a lot of things the organization doesn't do right, and I will voice my opinion. But on the other hand, if there are things that people are overcritical of, I will push back on it. That's just how I am. I give you a very, I'm trying my best. Obviously, I'm a Dolphin fan, but I give you my best at being unbiased. So we're going to start with Asante Samuel Sr. because this is something that is recent. This was both of these things. So NFL Live was yesterday and Asante Samuel Sr. was yesterday as well, coming out, and this is what he had to say.
Dolphins had no reason to trade Jalen Ramsey other than they're sensitive. There's no leadership in the Dolphins organization. Mike McDaniels is a pushover. Chris Greer, the general manager, he has no backbone. These guys over here at the Miami Dolphins, they are running this team like a little league team. No one can stand up to the players. They're terrified of their own players, and they have no control over their players.
So, from what I'm getting from what he's saying, Asante Samuel Jr. is not going to be a Dolphin. So the trading of Jalen Ramsey, in all honesty, everything he said, there's nothing really in there that is wrong, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and say to Asante Samuel Sr., like, oh, you don't even know what you're talking about, and you're talking trash, and you haven't even been in the organization, and this, and that, and you're just mad that the Dolphins probably didn't even give your son a contract. I'm not going to say any of that. I'm not going to say any of that at all, because they've put themselves in this situation, right? The trading of Jalen Ramsey came after giving Jalen Ramsey a contract extension, right? Because if you remember, Jalen Ramsey was dealing with like a groin injury or a hammy, and then all of a sudden he got a contract extension, and I'm good to go. I'm good to play week 2 or whatever. They don't know how to deal with those type of players. Now, as a fan, you could say those are toxic players. We don't want them in the locker room or this, and that. Which you're right? There are certain players in that style of play that could be toxic, that could bring a different style to that locker room or a different atmosphere to the locker room that's not good for a winning team. But you look at the winning teams, you look at the Super Bowl winning teams, they have alpha dogs, right? They have guys who will keep that locker room in check. They will have guys who will keep people who are giving up in check. And the Dolphins seem to not be able to hold on to those style of players. And Asante and Jalen Ramsey seems to be one of those. Now, do they have any in the locker room now? Maybe. There's some good, tough players, but then again, are they vocal leaders and all that stuff? And so him saying that McDaniel's a pushover and Greer has no backbone, again, he is going off of what he's hearing. Obviously, he hasn't worked with Greer or been coached by McDaniel, but perception is a big part of these things. And you look at the Miami Dolphins and their organization, it doesn't look too great, right? Because Jalen Ramsey is a guy, like, we're sitting here now after trading Jalen Ramsey to the Pittsburgh Steelers, hoping and praying that like Rasul Douglas signs with us, and hoping and praying that like Stephon Gilmore signs with us. These guys who are still on the street, whereas everyone else has their number one corner. Sauce Gardner's out there, Gonzalez in our own division, like, and we're here like, who's our number one corner? Is it Storm Duck? Is it Ethan Bonner? Is Cater going to play on the outside? Oh, is Cam Smith finally? The secondary is a mess in the cornerback situation. Side note, has anyone heard from Mika Fitzpatrick? Maybe he's waiting for the 22nd to make like, hey, I'm happy to be here. I'm glad to be back. Things have changed. I have grown, and I always kept a good relationship with the team. Blah blah blah. It's a mess, right? And you keep hearing culture from certain players, and obviously the head coach and all that stuff. But right now, looking on the outside in, it's kind of a mess, right? So, Asante Samuel Sr. comes out and says those things. He says, they're running this team like a little league team. He's not wrong in that aspect. And then you go back to what Raheem Mostert had to say when Jonnu was traded. Hot take, being a Pro Bowler on the Dolphins, get treated like blank. Happy for my guy, though. Go ball out. Now, I'll say this. This is where, like, semantics, right? Love Jonnu. Wish we could have kept Jonnu. He was an alternate Pro Bowler. That's me being petty, but, like, also, Raheem, when you had a great year and you were a Pro Bowler, didn't we give him a contract extension? And wasn't he just on the fish tank saying great things about the Raheem coming out and saying this was very like, wait, what? Because he was just on the fish tank saying good things about the Dolphins and his time with the team. And then he tweets this out. And then again, they took care of him as much as they did, especially after the year he had so many all-purpose touchdowns. And it's just like, the timing is weird on this one. And then Jonnu was on Teron Armstead's podcast. That was, I think, Saturday. It was over the weekend. And this is what he had to say about the whole trade situation. He said, I didn't foresee this happening with how the season went for me individually. Obviously, I had aspirations of ending my career in Miami, with it basically being home for me, my children, my family. But I understand the business side of it, and it didn't work out. I'm grateful. I've got no ill feelings towards Miami and nobody in the organization. He also says, I can't sit here and lie and say it didn't sting when the process was playing itself out. And that is a very diplomatic PC answer, which, cool, right? He said he didn't foresee this happening. He had a great year for the Dolphins. He had a franchise record-setting year, fourth best tight end in the NFL when it came to all these receiving and touchdowns and yada, yada. Great year. But he was never going to get $12 million from the Miami Dolphins. For one, they can't afford to give him $12 million because there's bigger needs like corner, because Jalen Ramsey has 2 feet out the door. He's literally closing it. Different aspects of the team we need, God forbid, like we were sitting at $13 million before anyone got traded. Then we still needed to make moves. So the thought of, hey, Jonnu, you want 12? Well, we can't do 12, right? And obviously there was discussions. It's been reported there's discussions with him and with his manager, his agent, and they tried to get something done. But obviously the Steelers were willing to pay him 12. The Dolphins were not willing to pay him 12. And like he said, I understand the business side of it, because again, you had one fantastic year with us, record-setting, Johnny. It's like Durham Smythe, right? I love, not Durham Smythe, Anthony Fasano. Love Anthony Fasano. Will always love Anthony Fasano. Even Randy McMichael. Some, great tight ends that we've had. Obviously, there's other ones, but Johnny will always have that blip in 2024 where everyone's like, you remember Jonnu Smith on the Dolphins in 20? But at the end of the thing, before you were a Dolphin, you were kind of, and we'll see how you do after. It's the offense, and I talked about that. And again, I am not here to crap on Jonnu, but that $12 million is where the disconnect was. and the Steelers are willing to give it to you, and the Dolphins weren't. So the Dolphins did you a favor. And that's probably why he says, I have no ill feelings towards Miami and nobody in the organization, because the Dolphins were like, look, we have the rights to your contract, and we could just say, look, we need you on this team. We need your skills as a tight end on this team. So you're going to stay here and play, or you're just going to get fined. Or they say, hey, look, Steelers are going to give you 12. We're never going to get to 12. We're just going to let you go get your money, and, good luck. They did him a favor, and that's why he came out and said, I got no ill feelings and yada, yada. So, people don't think about that aspect of trades and that aspect of releasing players and stuff, because there's a lot of times where you can hold on to a player and try to get something for them and screw them over, where at the time where they're like, all right, we're not getting anything for them, it's post-draft, whatever, we're just going to release you. It's like now they have to hurry up and catch up with their new team, whereas there's teams that will cut them before free agency starts. Go do it's not going to work here. We're going to cut you. Go do what you need to do. Go find a place. Go kick butt, blah, blah, blah. So, there's different aspects of all that stuff that kind of go under the radar when it comes to teams and stuff. So there's that, right? To quick recap, I agree with what Asante Samuel Sr. said. Nothing in what he had to say really I could push back on. Raheem Mostert, kind of iffy about when he released that. And then Johnny said some great things as well. So, it was good understanding. Now let's listen to what NFL Live has to say about the Miami Dolphins on that trade aspect.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the Steelers side of this so far, but Kimberly, I'm curious, did the Dolphins get better with this trade last week? Because there have been some people who have wondered about the Dolphins side of things.
Laura, yeah, I'm one of them. I think this is a little bit of a head scratcher because as we talked about with the Jalen Ramsey of it all, talked about the physicality, and that's the type of player that they're moving on from. When I look at the Dolphins, one of the things that we've said year after year is this team just doesn't seem to be physically tough. Not my words. Opponents have said that the same. And so when I look at the Dolphins, I just wonder what the direction is for this team. Even the Darren Waller move, that's a guy who hasn't played in a minute. So I'm not sure what the Dolphins are. Perhaps perhaps you guys have a.
So she's confused about the whole physicality of it. And, we're talking about being a physical football team, but then we trade Jalen Ramsey. Obviously, the Dolphins would have liked to keep. See, this is where I feel like there's some type of disconnect, or some people just don't understand. Jalen Ramsey, like when you look at the trade where we sent Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu for Mika in a 2027 fifth, people need to understand Jalen Ramsey was gone, right? So the Jalen Ramsey aspect of that trade was a given, right? The whole surprise was getting Mika, right? Because there was talks of Jalen Ramsey being traded to somebody, and there was talks of Jonnu being traded to the Steelers, on, off, on, off, on, off. Getting Mika back was a huge win, because I thought we were just getting traded. I didn't think they were going to trade Mika, multiple time Pro Bowler, all pro. So the whole, I don't understand why they traded Jalen. You need to. And maybe that's because this is national media, so they're not as tapped into each team and knowing all the stories and the behind the scenes of what happened with Ramsey and Mike McDaniel and Greer, and how he's just like, I'm going to go. He was gone. So the whole thought process of, well, they want to get tougher. Why are you trading Ramsey? Because he was gone. He didn't want to be here. He wanted to go win a Super Bowl, and this team is not in position right now to win a Super Bowl.
A better read on them, because to me this is a total wait and see, because I'm not sure what Miami is thinking.
Well, Darren Waller did nearly make my Spotify Wrapped list this past year, because I'm a big fan of his music, but I too was confused by the addition. Here's the thing about this move from the Miami side. I think in a vacuum, if a team trades two players that weren't likely long for the franchise for a player in Minkah Fitzpatrick, who has been a three-time All-Pro, who has not been at the peak of his powers the past couple of years, but is younger and is under a decent contract.
That's the other thing that I keep hearing about Minkah Fitzpatrick. Oh, he fell off. He's not the same guy. He's slower. This is like one guy on Twitter make a whole video talking about how he's out of position and blah, blah, blah. he's going into a defense that is going to suit him very well. I wouldn't be surprised if Mika takes a step forward.
Control for the next years. I'm okay with it. The issue I have with Miami kind of gets to what Kimberly was referring to, which is that they've made a handful of big bets over the past few years, whether it's trades or extensions or trades that led to extensions, a la Bradley Chubb, a deal that has not worked out. The Tyreek Hill extension, which, one season into it looked like perhaps, a mistake on Miami's part. We'll see if he bounces back this season. Jalen Ramsey as well, extended in September, now traded in July. Mina, it just feels like this is a team whose football business is often mediocre, and that's why one of the reasons why I think this team might be kind of heading towards the middle in the AFC as opposed to competing in the playoffs.
I have nothing to push back on what Field Yates said. He nailed that on the head. That's Chris Grier. That's Chris Grier, and that is the huge mistakes that this team has made by giving contracts, by making moves that weren't the right. Like, this is why I was so adamant that I didn't understand why Chris Grier came back and the whole status quo and the on the field's not good enough. This man, yes, he's made good moves in bringing players here or making certain moves, but also he has made other drastic moves that have, if you think about it, set the franchise back a little bit, whether it's cap space, whether it's draft picks, by making these certain, like Field Yates, he nailed it on the head, giving, Bradley Chubb, making that move instead of going after Roquan Smith, the linebacker for the Chicago Bears, who is now killing it with the Baltimore Ravens. There were so many different moves that we made that if in hindsight we did the thing that a lot of us fans wanted to do, the team would probably look completely different than they do. So, that again is where I'm sitting, where you have Chris Grier, who survived Adam Gase, he survived Brian Flores, and now he's getting another year with Mike McDaniel. 3 head coaches, 9 years, and he's still here. It just, like, you would think that this man was in the AFC Championship 6 out of the past 9 years he was here, and that's the reason. Like, you would think that we have Howie Grossman. Makes no sense.
Yeah, finances clearly played a role in this. And if you want to say one nice thing about Miami, getting the contract off the books, not having to eat it, was honestly, I was a little bit surprised they managed to do that. So that's a bit of a win. But, Kimberly, you're right. The secondary has major problems. I have to think they're going to add another corner because as it stands, it's probably the weakest cornerback group in the NFL right now. There's still a few free agents out there. Asante Samuel Jr., Stephon Gilmore, names that come to mind as potential guys they could sign. Russell Douglas from Buffalo, and then Mike Hilton in the slot. But, this would be just like a one-year fire type deal, and you're really counting on that front seven, that pass rush.
Yeah, I think all of this, leads to the points that we're making. That the Dolphins have missed the playoffs in 6 of the last 8 seasons. They haven't won a playoff game since 2000. Alan, when you look at a team like this, that at times we've been like, oh, the Dolphins are exciting and their offense has been super exciting. What do you think about them now going into next season?
It's tough. For them, they've lost a lot on defense, but as well as if you do want to start with a building block, bringing somebody in like Minka, who's a very good locker room and culture guy, I think may start to shape things and move it in a direction a little bit. He's going to come to work each and every day. He's a hard-nosed player. He's a physical player. So I think he can maybe help establish a little bit of identity on the defensive side of the ball and kind of rally the guys around him.
That's a great point. I mean, Mike McDaniel would tell you their goal has been to avoid those December slumps. That's when they've fallen off, even whatever they've done during the season not mattering as much. All right, we're just...
So you can tell, and again, I'm not knocking Mina Kimes or Field Yates, or I don't catch the first lady's name, but you can tell who the reporters are and who the player is, because the last guy talking about bringing in Mika Fitzpatrick and the locker room and this and that, is it going to happen? Am I going to sit here and tell you, oh, this is going to happen? And yeah, I don't know. Again, I will give you my record prediction before the season starts. I will tell you what I see in training camp and all that stuff. Like, you're going to get the honest opinion out of me. And again, I've been pretty close to my predictions on the seasons. I will tell you that. And, I tend to go into seasons I'd rather be, you guys know my motto. Again, you've been following me for 7 years. You know my motto. I'd rather be surprised than let down. I always undersell the team. Even after 2023, I was like, and now I'm really underselling it because, and I'm going to talk about, I think maybe tomorrow or Thursday, I'm going to talk about team needs heading into training camp. But there still are, the depth on this team is not great, and it still worries the crap out of me. So there's still a lot that this team needs to do to be successful, right? And I'm not sitting here and saying it's a guarantee they're going to suck. It's a guarantee top 10 pick. Because anything could happen in the NFL. No one thought Washington was going to get to the NFC Championship. No one, a lot of people thought that Jaden Daniels was going to be good. No one thought he was going to be that good that quickly his rookie year. So things could happen that no one expects, but I'll reserve my thoughts and opinions on how the season's going to be after I see training camp. But comment below, let me know what you guys think of what everyone had to say. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have pushback on some of the things that have been said? Do you not? Comment below, let me know. I'll see you tomorrow. But like usual, stay classy and fins up.